In 1810, the owner of the Horse Shoe Brewery in London built a 22-foot-high beer fermentation tank in the middle of a West End slum, and in 1814 it exploded. Welcome to this episode of History Nuggets. Today's topic is entitled The Beer Flood. Henry Meux owned and operated the Horse Shoe Brewery at the corner of Great Russell Street and Tottenham Court Road in London's West Side. The tank, made of wood but held together with more than 20 massive iron rings, took up most of the back wall of the building's interior space. The massive container held 3,555 barrels of rich brown porter, similar to the stout of today, and enough to serve 1 million people with 1 pint each. The liquid alone weighed more than 571 tons. On the 17th of October, 1814, at about 4:30 in the afternoon, the smallest of the iron rings fell victim to age and corrosion and snapped. George Crick, the clerk on duty, made note of the breakage, but wasn't overly alarmed, as it happened about 2 or 3 times a year, and standard procedure was to simply call someone to come and fix it. However, about an hour later, the barrel violently ruptured and hot beer burst out of the vat with explosive force. Crick was standing nearby, but by the time he reacted and ran to the barrel, the back wall of the building had been blown out by the sheer power of the Russian flood. The strength of the flood also blasted apart another large vat and several smaller barrels, adding their contents to the torrent. A tsunami of beer, over 7,500 barrels worth in all, then burst out into the streets of London. The neighborhood around the brewery was called the St. Giles Rookery, and it was essentially a slum. Low-cost houses and tenements housed poor residents, Irish immigrants, criminals, and prostitutes. When the 15-foot-high wave of beer and debris blasted into the rookery, it filled the basements of 2 nearby houses in moments, undermining and collapsing the structures. In one house, the flood killed Mary Banfield and her daughter Hannah, who were taking tea in their upstairs room. In the other, the rushing beer drowned 4 mourners holding an Irish wake in the basement for a 2-year-old boy who had died the previous day. One of the victims was the little boy's mother. The flood also knocked down the wall of the nearby Tavistock Arms pub, crushing a teenage serving girl beneath it. Her body still stood upright when found hours later. In all, 8 people were killed, though there was a report of a 9th dying of alcohol poisoning several days later. 2 more went missing. Townspeople wading through the waist-high beer rescued 3 of the brewery's workers, including George Crick's brother, John, and others successfully excavated another from the rubble. The area stank like beer for months. In the aftermath of the flood, locals raised about £830 to assist the families of the survivors, who lost an estimated £3,000 worth of property. The disaster cost the Horse Shoe Brewery about £23,000, equivalent to roughly $1.25 million today, in repair costs. Parliament, by special petition and supported by the Prince Regent, granted Meux £7,250, roughly $400,000 today, as compensation for about 7,600 barrels of lost beer. The amount granted by Parliament kept the brewery in business, and Henry Meux later built an expansion. An inquest determined that the flood was an act of God, and so Henry was not charged with any crimes. He was later made a baronet in 1831 by King William IV. The London beer flood, as it came to be known, also caused the industry to re-examine the use of wooden fermentation vats. During the course of the 19th century, breweries would change over to concrete vats lined with resin, asphalt, enamel, or slate, to prevent just such a calamity from happening again. The Horse Shoe Brewery was ultimately razed in 1922, and the West End's Dominion Theatre now lies partly on its former site. Thank you kindly for tuning in. If you liked what you heard, please be sure to give us a like and subscribe to our channel for more stories just like this one in the future. Have a beautiful day, and we wish you all peace and knowledge.